This is my 15.2 psychological and physiological response to injury, and this is the case studies part of the assignment where I look at 2 real life examples of athletes that have suffered long-term injuries and assess what different mental states they will be going through and also some of the physiological aspects of their recovery. So the first athlete I look at is Jonathan Davies. He's a Welsh rugby international who was injured while playing for against Australia. He suffered a grade 3 ankle strain and he was ruled out for up to 6 months. And he also required surgery on the injury. He also missed an important section of the season with big games for Scarlets, his team, in both domestic and European competitions, as well as being ruled out for the upcoming Six Nations campaign. To begin, firstly, at the exact moment of injury, one of the physiological aspects that would have occurred is the inflammation. The inflammation stage would have started, and this would have been because there would have been lots of blood running to the area, the ankle in this situation, to try and defend the body against the dying tissue, muscle tissue that's been caused by the injury that is there. Moving on to the stages of grief, which for this case I believe would start with denial with Jonathan Davies, because the injury was suffered very late on in the game, so he's going to be very much questioning the severity of the injury, as well because it was suffered quite a few months before the Six Nations. The Six Nations is obviously a major tournament for any rugby player. He wouldn't have even probably considered it to be as serious as that. He would have probably thought, give it a few weeks, maybe a month at most, a couple of months, I'll be back well in time for the Six Nations. But obviously this didn't turn out to be the case, and this denial would have set in almost immediately. And then obviously there's going to be his emotional state's probably going to be an element of fear, not knowing what's happened to him, sort of what could lie ahead. Obviously he's still in denial, so he may not fear that he's going to be out for the Welsh season of the Six Nations, but he may fear for missing big games over the Christmas period for his team, and also fearing potentially that it could be a serious, potentially career-threatening injury. Moving on to waiting for the diagnosis, and his emotional state is going to be very much one of anxiety and stress, because he's not going to know what the severity is. He's probably got over the original denial stage, and now he's thinking more worried about how serious it could be, how long he could be out for, potentially if it ever come back again, because he's probably slightly aware now that this isn't going to be a short-term injury, this is going to be a long-term injury, and therefore the anxiety of not knowing exactly what's going on but knowing that it's serious is going to be a big part. And then also an element of anger will probably start to set in, because he, obviously, as mentioned before, it was the last play of the game. It was really quite an innocuous injury that was suffered, and therefore he's going to be angry potentially at himself for causing that injury and just causing that little slip that has caused the sliding of the twisting of the ankle to then result in the sprain. And the fact that it was so near the end of the game, it was so almost needless that the injury took place, and for it to cause that amount of damage to him is probably going to cause a great amount of anger. And then finally, for the waiting for diagnosis, there's going to be an element of bargaining, isn't there? He's going to be praying potentially to gods. He's going to be just begging within himself that this injury isn't as bad as he could think it is. It could potentially be, and that in fact it's very much a matter of he'll be back in a few weeks, a few months perhaps. He'd be wanting to avoid any operations, and he'd just be bargaining that this is not as serious as he thinks it is. And finally, I've put that this will potentially be the end of the inflammation stage. The inflammation stage takes up about 10% of recovery time, and this is likely to be where the inflammation stage stops and moves towards the reparative stage. Moving on to the receiving of the diagnosis, again, I believe he's going to go back to anger as the stages of grief. He'll go back a stage, as he's going to be angry that he's out for such a long period of time, and that he's going to miss so many vital games for his club. And also that he's going to require an operation, and there's going to be a substantial amount of time out. That's going to cause a lot of inside anger with him, because he's going to feel almost responsible for the situation he's in. And also there will be an element of denial within his emotional state, because he's going to be thinking that it can't be that serious. It was a little turn of the ankle. It was an innocuous little injury. It can't be as bad as they're saying. I'm not going to be out for the 6 months and miss that large portion of the season. It can't. There's going to be he's going to be questioning the people that are giving him the information. And then the period before the operation, he's probably going to be very depressed. He's going to be very low, depressed. He's going to be questioning himself and whether he's got the willpower to get over this. Obviously, he'll be seeing all his teams building towards the end of the season, the Six Nations. He's not going to be able to feel a part of that, and also he's going to just feel very depressed about not being able to do his daily job, what he's used to doing, and he's going to be knowing that potentially the operation might go wrong. So there's a little bit. He's going to be feeling very low at this point. And then the beginning of treatment after the operation, this is where he accept that the injuries happen. He'll probably be a little bit more accepting, because the operation would have gone right. He would have been given a time period that he can now work towards, and that's where the goal setting comes in, where he can begin to accept that he's got the injury and move forward with this. So he, as mentioned before, he begins to look at setting goals, time periods for recoveries, time periods for things that he needs to achieve, such as getting back in full training. He'll be able to set up a training plan that will look at the recovery time and the time that the treatments need to be done in. He'll get back into a daily routine, which is probably quite a big thing for athletes, is that during that period before the injury, he's going to be suffering with, he's going to be just sat there injured, not doing anything. And that's obviously why he would have been depressed before. And now he can set a routine that he can get involved in and set the goals that are needed to move forward. Also, I put stress relaxation, as I think at the very early stages of treatment, this is potentially the best psychological way of overcoming any bad feelings you might have, any potential difficulties you might have, because you're still not gonna be very mobile. So I would say it's unlikely you're gonna want to get back involved in the sport at this early stage of your recovery. You're probably going to want that time away, and but you're still going to be feeling a lot of anger inside you, a lot of potential frustration, and just that stress release, just to calm yourself down at times and just focus on the goals that have been set and achieving those. Now, moving on to the actual, when they're deep in treatment, they're doing their stretches, their strengthening conditioning sections. Also, the remodeling stage would have started here at the treatment. The muscle will begin to strengthen again, and the athlete will begin to work towards full fitness. But anyway, the treatment section will be a little bit more, there'll be a little bit more mobility. The athlete will start doing things that he's done before, and that will really start to help him. The only thing is, the emotional state of the athlete is likely to be one of he's starting to feel isolated, because he's going to be doing all this treatment on his own. He sees his teammates out there doing team warm-ups, team run-throughs, and he's going to be on his own in a treatment room with potentially the physio, but he's going to be isolated from that group situation, that group feeling, and he's going to feel very much on his own. And this is going to probably lead to one of the responses of treatment, which is frustration. He's going to be frustrated. He can't jump straight back in, get into games, start playing again, start being around his teammates, training every day. And that's going to really frustrate him. One of the strategies I'd use more for treatment is music. As mentioned before, he's going to feel very isolated. Just having that music going will make him feel probably a lot more settled. He'd be able to focus on what he's doing for each treatment session. He'd be able to focus on what he's got to achieve with the goals. And it will probably greatly benefit him when he hasn't got the people talking to him and the group situations, the noise and that. He'd just have a bit of music that will help him focus on what needs to be achieved. Moving on, then obviously, as mentioned before, the remodeling stage would have started now. And then getting back into beginning training again, beginning full training with your teammates. There's probably going to be a slight lack of motivation, because he's going to be there training and he's going to know that he's unable to play at the end of the week, but he's going to have there's going to be a few weeks where he wants to, as much as he wants to play, he knows that he's not even going to be near selection because he's just not fit enough yet. And that's probably gonna frustrate him a bit. It's gonna lead to a lack of motivation, because he's just not going to be able to join in. He's not going to be able. He's not going to be selected at the end of the week, and he's going to struggle through every training session. And probably after the long sessions of treatment, he's finally got there. He's probably worked so hard during the treatment stage to then begin training again and fit into that natural environment, and also see that so much has changed, because lots would have changed over his injury period. That's going to make him almost lose motivation, because he's going to think about the fact that he's got so much to do, and that is probably going to lead to a lack of motivation. And this would be where you start staying involved in sport. You start getting involved in rugby. They lose a lot of the injured players on match days for stuff like Waterboy. He might be able to be involved in that. So he's around that match day squad. He could be involved in a bit of coaching or something along those lines with the potential youth squads. And this will just help him potentially gain a bit of motivation back to wanting to get back out there playing. And then full match fitness. I think the main one here is going to be the main emotional state of mind that he's going to be in is a lack of confidence. He's been out for 6 months. He's not played any rugby. He doesn't know how that injury is gonna hold up. He's potentially not going to want to do little steps that put pressure on that ankle that he's injured. He's going to be questioning himself. And all of that's going to lead to a lack of confidence. You might not see straight away some of the stuff that he was able to do before in his game straight away. And that lack of confidence could lead to a drop in performance and could lead to him questioning himself. And it's about how quickly he's able to get over that will lead to him having success, because that lack of confidence really could affect the level at which he performs.